Good evening. Tonight, we're talking about something that affects us all, but in a way we rarely discuss: war. Now, normally when we talk about war, we rightly focus on the horrific human cost. The lives lost, the families shattered, the cities turned to rubble. And that is, and always should be, the primary story. But tonight, we're going to look at a different, though related, casualty of conflict: corporate profits. Yes, I know, it sounds about as sympathetic as a billionaire complaining his yacht's helipad is too small. Oh, the humanity! My third quarter earnings are slightly below projections because of a pesky little genocide. But stick with me, because this isn't about feeling sorry for massive corporations. It's about understanding how the gears of our global economy are being ground to a halt by military conflicts. When missiles fly, so do operational costs. When ships have to reroute around war zones, supply chains don't just get disrupted, they get completely mangled, like a piece of IKEA furniture assembled by a drunk toddler. And insurance premiums? They skyrocket, becoming so expensive that shipping companies start to wonder if it's cheaper to just hire Captain Phillips as a consultant. The truth is, modern warfare isn't just fought on battlefields, it's fought on balance sheets. From Kiev to Taipei, from the Red Sea to the Sahel, geopolitical instability is the silent, invisible hand slapping the market across the face. So tonight, let's pull back the curtain on war's hidden costs and see how corporate profits are finding themselves directly under siege. It's a story of numbers, risk, and the surprising fragility of the system we all depend on. And it's a lot more interesting than it sounds, I promise. Probably. Let's start in Europe, with Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, a genuine horror show. And while the world rightly focused on the human tragedy, corporations were quietly having a complete meltdown. For decades, Western companies had poured into Russia, seeing it as a vast, untapped market of 144 million people just waiting to buy their flat-pack furniture, their lukewarm coffee, and their inexplicably popular chicken sandwiches. It was a capitalist dream. Then, in February 2022, that dream turned into a logistical nightmare wrapped in a public relations disaster. Suddenly, staying in Russia wasn't just bad optics. It was practically impossible. Sanctions, asset freezes, and the swift banking cutoff meant companies couldn't get money in or out. Major brands like McDonald's, IKEA, and Renault were faced with a stark choice: stay and be seen as complicit, or leave and write off billions. Renault, for example, sold its majority stake in Russia's biggest car maker for the grand total of 1 symbolic ruble. 1. That's less than the price of the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. In total, Western companies have reported over $100 billion in losses from their Russian operations. That's a staggering amount of money to just disappear. But the pain didn't stop at the Russian border. Putin, in his infinite wisdom, decided to weaponize energy, turning off the gas taps to Europe. This sent energy prices into the stratosphere. German manufacturing, the powerhouse of the European economy, suddenly found itself paying astronomical bills just to keep the lights on. It's hard to be a competitive industrial giant when the cost of melting steel is roughly equivalent to the GDP of a small island nation. This energy shock sent a deflationary chill across the continent, hobbling industries and making everything more expensive for everyone. And it's not over. The loss of the Russian market is permanent for many, a black hole on their global map. The energy realignment is still causing pain, forcing a costly and frantic scramble for alternatives. The war has fundamentally rewired Europe's economic landscape. It's a stark reminder that when geopolitics gets messy, the idea of business as usual becomes a punchline. Companies that once saw Russia as a golden goose now see it as a cautionary tale written in red ink, a brutal lesson in how quickly a promising market can become a financial black hole. Now, let's pivot to Asia, where the saber rattling over Taiwan is creating a different kind of corporate anxiety. This isn't about losing a market, it's about potentially losing the entire digital world as we know it. Because at the heart of this tension is one company, in one specific place, that is almost comically important. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. Think of TSMC as the planet's digital heart. If it stops beating, everything, and I mean everything, goes into cardiac arrest. Your iPhone, your car, your laptop, the servers that run Netflix, the medical equipment in hospitals, the guidance systems in advanced weaponry, they all run on chips, and the vast majority of the most advanced ones are made by TSMC. They are so dominant in the high-end semiconductor market that their closest competitor is, frankly, not that close. This has created what experts call a silicon shield, the idea that TSMC is so vital to the global economy that its security is everyone's problem. It's a fantastic defense strategy, until someone decides to call your bluff. And China is doing a lot more than just thinking about it. Their constant military drills, naval patrols, and aggressive rhetoric are a source of perpetual, gut-wrenching anxiety for investors and corporations worldwide. A conflict in the Taiwan Strait wouldn't just be a regional war, it would be a global economic cataclysm. The supply chain for semiconductors would instantly vaporize. Tim Cook wouldn't just have trouble launching a new iPhone, he'd have trouble building a toaster. The resulting tech famine would make the COVID-era chip shortage look like a mild inconvenience. The mere threat of conflict is already having an effect. Investors are demanding a geopolitical risk premium for anything tied to the region. Companies are desperately trying to diversify their supply chains, a process that is eye-wateringly expensive and will take the better part of a decade. TSMC itself is building new fabs in Arizona and Japan, but these are a drop in the ocean compared to their Taiwanese output. The situation is a masterclass in global fragility, a high-stakes poker game where one of the players is holding the world's entire supply of playing cards. Let's sail over to the Middle East, a region that is, to put it mildly, no stranger to conflict. The recent escalation, particularly the war in Gaza and the simmering tensions between Israel and Iran, has thrown a Molotov cocktail into an already flammable situation. But for global business, the most immediate and painful headache has come from a narrow strip of water, the Red Sea. In response to the conflict, the Houthi rebels in Yemen began attacking commercial ships, effectively turning one of the world's most important shipping lanes into a high-risk shooting gallery. This is a massive problem because of a little thing called the Suez Canal. About 12% of global trade, including a huge chunk of all container traffic, passes through this choke point. It's the superhighway connecting Asia and Europe. Now, imagine if someone started randomly firing rockets at cars on I-95. You'd probably take a detour, right? That's exactly what shipping companies are doing. They are rerouting their massive container ships all the way around Africa's Cape of Good Hope, a detour that adds up to 2 weeks and about $1 million in extra fuel costs per voyage. This isn't just a scheduling inconvenience, it's a direct injection of chaos and cost into the global supply chain. Delays mean empty shelves and stalled production lines. Higher fuel costs and soaring insurance premiums get passed directly on to consumers in the form of inflation. That sweater you ordered from Vietnam? It's now taking the scenic route, and its price tag is going to reflect its extended world tour. Companies like Tesla, Volvo, and Michelin have already had to halt production at European plants because they simply couldn't get the parts they needed on time. And then there's the oil. The Middle East is, of course, the world's gas station, and any hint of wider conflict makes the oil market incredibly jumpy. The threat of Iran getting more directly involved, potentially disrupting the Strait of Hormuz through which 20% of the world's oil flows, sends prices spiking. For businesses, this is a double whammy. Not only are their goods stuck on a slow boat around Africa, but the fuel for that boat, and for everything else, is getting more expensive. It's a perfect storm of logistical hell, driving up costs and uncertainty for every business that relies on moving physical things from one part of the world to another. Finally, let's turn to Africa, where a different kind of instability is rattling a specific but crucial set of industries. We're not talking about large-scale conventional wars, but a rash of military coups and a rising tide of what's called resource nationalism. A string of coups in the Sahel region in countries like Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso has created a belt of military juntas right across the continent. This is deeply concerning for a number of reasons, not least of which is the stability of contracts that international mining and energy firms rely on. Take Niger, for instance. It's one of the world's largest producers of uranium, a critical component for nuclear power, particularly for France. After the coup in 2023, the new military government immediately started making noises about reviewing and renegotiating mining contracts with French companies. When a government that took power by force starts talking about reviewing your multi-billion-dollar investment, that's corporate code for bend over. The risk of expropriation, the state just seizing your assets, is suddenly very, very real. This isn't just happening in the Sahel. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, home to the world's largest reserves of cobalt, a mineral essential for electric vehicle batteries, the government is also pushing for a bigger piece of the pie from foreign mining giants. This trend of resource nationalism is understandable from their perspective. They want more of the wealth generated from their own land. But for companies that have invested billions based on existing agreements, it represents a massive political and financial risk. It introduces a level of uncertainty that makes long-term planning almost impossible. The instability has a ripple effect. It scares away new investment, which these countries desperately need. It creates security nightmares for the companies that are already there, forcing them to spend a fortune on protecting their people and their operations. And it threatens the supply of critical resources that the rest of the world needs for the green energy transition. So while the headlines may focus on the dramatic politics of a coup, the corporate fallout is a slow-burn crisis, a story of nervous executives, shredded contracts, and the very real possibility that the resources needed for our future might be stuck in the ground, held hostage by political chaos. So what have we learned tonight? Well, apart from the fact that you should probably hug your microchips and thank your local container ship captain, we've seen that the age of predictable, stable globalization is, for now, on hold. The neat lines on corporate spreadsheets are being violently redrawn by the messy realities of war and conflict. From the energy shockwaves of the Ukraine war to the technological precipice of Taiwan, the global business landscape is being reshaped in real time. The old assumption that commerce could exist in a bubble, separate from the gritty world of geopolitics, has been thoroughly and painfully debunked. Companies are now grappling with a new, volatile reality. Supply chains, once optimized for pure efficiency, are now being reevaluated for resilience. Just-in-time is being replaced by just-in-case, a shift that is expensive and complicated. Businesses are being forced to become political analysts, risk managers, and fortune tellers, trying to predict where the next flashpoint will be and how to insulate themselves from the fallout. This isn't just a problem for the C-suite. The inflationary pressures and product shortages created by these disruptions affect all of us. The hidden costs of war are, it turns out, not so hidden after all. They show up in the price of gas, the availability of your next smartphone, and the stability of your pension fund. As ongoing conflicts continue to simmer and new ones threaten to erupt, the ability to navigate this treacherous new world will be the single biggest challenge facing the global economy. Companies will have to adapt, diversify, and de-risk, or face being yet another casualty, not of bombs and bullets, but of the brutal, unforgiving logic of the bottom line. Follow, like, and subscribe to MindNance for more.